We would like to acknowledge that we are recording from the traditional territory of the Kias, Saging, and Anishinaabe in the Robinson Superior Treaty area.
Morning and welcome to week 4 as we go into it. We are on location today at DeCourcy Lake here in just north of Thunder Bay. It is the long weekend and we hope that you are enjoying some time with family and that you're finding a little balance in your life. As we know, you're all working, doing really well in our course and doing some great posts and things. So we are finding a little balance today in the sunshine, so we're greeting you from there. We're coming up on week 4 for part 1. That's securing accountability. Some of the finance pieces, some of the drier pieces. I know I wrote in one of our module openings that this was the part that could be a little dry, but it is one of the parts that is most critical to your job because it helps you get the other things done that I think we all really consider as the fun pieces. That's the instructional learning piece, the setting vision and goals for your school.
One of the things that we were talking about leading up to this is the accountability piece is a critical piece of your role. It's the part that keeps your school running smoothly. It's the part where you have safety and security for your staff and your students. The financial pieces where you're really responsible for managing the finances of your building and allocating those so that they can actually support the student well-being and the learning agenda that you have set for your school. And I think from reading a lot of the postings that people put down about how they would go about setting that vision, having a solid, well-run building is critical in order to actually achieve your vision. So keeping in mind that all those strengths that you talked about, your personal strengths and how the processes you would use to move your school vision forward, you really do have to have those, I'm going to call them the groundwork or the nuts and bolts of the school operation in order. And often when we go to a new school, that's really what the first month is spent doing in conjunction with setting your vision, is making sure that you have a solid setup in your school so that kids know the expectations, you're putting things in place so that they can do that. Staff know the vision, but also you're setting those expectations as well. So it's really communicating with your community and ensuring that everybody has a, I don't want to say in it, because they do, but they have a role in it of ensuring that things are running smoothly. And when your school is running well, you can then spend a lot more time focused on your learning agenda.
And just to comment on some of the posts that we saw in Module 3, particularly around the special education scenario, obviously there's a lot of folks in our course that have some really good experience in special education that really shone through in the postings. A couple things, I know we talked a lot about at that point when an individuals in your office, that there's a lot of things going on. One of the best things to do is they want somebody to listen to them. And I realized we threw at you that you needed to be somewhere right away, but most of you handled that appropriately too. Asking the person to take a seat in your office is a great idea because it gives them an opportunity to get out of the main view of what's going on and you a chance to collect your thoughts and really just listening to them the first time. Not a lot of decisions always have to be made right away. And so that really came through in your post. I was pretty impressed with that. Some of the folks really enjoyed the legal piece regarding looking through the Carswell statutes and that, I wrote in some of the responses to those posts that it's a very large book. There's a lot of statutes that we're responsible for. However, it's really not about memorizing them. It's about knowing where to find them. So that little exercise just gave you an opportunity to get familiar with the book and know where to locate those statutes. And I saw folks referencing many of the statutes that you would have found in Carswell within your spec ed post. So that was really neat too. I'll just say a little bit on my budget. One of the things I do in my school, a mentor principal of mine taught me this, and that's every month I pull my budget. And it helps me keep an eye on where things are, exactly how much I've spent, how much I have left to spend, where things are allocated, if we're overspending in places. And I'll give you a simple, for instance, we had 2 extra phone lines that were attached to my building, and that was costing my school budget, which comes out of my money, not the board's money. Quite a bit. And if you're watching it every month, it gives you an opportunity to ensure that the money you're spending is going towards advancing your SIP, your school improvement plan goals, your vision, and what's ever needed in your building. So though budget can be a little dry, I also find it kind of fun actually. So that's one tip if you're thinking about when you get in your own building, is pulling that budget report monthly and just taking a look at it and keeping an eye on where things are and what's going on.
Along that budget line, if you don't have a background in finance or accounting or any of those things, and maybe not necessarily have a lot of experience with it, in most school boards, you'll have a finance department who will have people in that department who will gladly come out and meet with you in August or early September, look at your budget, go through the budget lines, explain what percentage of the budget you have control over. The board that I work in, we don't have control over our custodial budget, but we're still responsible for the custodial budget. So really knowing and keeping track of things like materials, cleaning supplies, that type of stuff, and then communicating with your chief custodian on those costs. Because while I'm not responsible for them, while I don't have a say in them, I'm still responsible for them on the bottom line. So I found not having that background, I've learned a lot from working with our finance department people. And I do an actual 3 times a year meeting with the finance department in August, and then I meet again in January, and then I meet again in May, just to make sure that, and then I check like you every single month. I get the secretary to run a report for me, and then I sit down in my system. The secretary does a lot of the entering for the expenses, and so she and I sit down and actually go through it together, and you find little inconsistencies when they come up that way.
Yeah, and just one more set on this next module coming up, the securing accountability. And accountability really is about how we keep the public trust in public education. And it may seem that you're just one small building, one small school board, but the reality of it is that without that accountability piece and without that ability to be transparent, we do risk losing the public trust. And I think that's really critical right now in public education, that we recognize that these pieces of the puzzle, whether it's health and safety or it's legislative pieces or it's finance pieces, are just really critical to us keeping that public trust, which is what's so important in public education.
Another piece of that is working with your school council. And your school council also has a budget, and usually you have a small budget given through the board, but then often school councils are involved in some sort of raising funds for learning for students. Officially, it's not on their mandate, and some schools have a separate parent fundraising council and a separate school council, but in smaller schools, it's often the same group of people. So really being transparent with those finances as well. And you can, although I've never known anyone to, you can commandeer any school funds for whatever you think you need to spend them on. But the reality is those are collective decisions made by the people who've raised the funds. And when you engage in fundraising, you should be stating up front, according to the policy in our system, what you're raising funds for. So you're not just randomly raising money, you're raising it for a school playground, or you're raising it for classroom libraries, or you're raising it for team sports, for buses or transportation. Whatever it is you're raising money for, clearly state and communicate with your parent community so that they know where that fundraising money is going.
And I know, just to comment on that fundraising piece, the ministry a couple of years ago began requiring, actually it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, began requiring all school councils, all schools, to create a fundraising schedule calendar, because it's actually a really hot topic. You can look at People for Education. They've got quite a few interesting monographs on school fundraising, because it is a hot topic right now, because particularly around equity and the idea that small schools, and I'll just give an example of mine. My small school is in a marginalized urban setting, and the issues that arise are, our school fundraising budget for the year is roughly $3,000 or $4,000, whereas other schools in my district raise as much as $30,000 to $50,000 a year. So we start to talk about the equity in which and kinds of programming that children get to access to with those fundraisings. But that set aside, it's a really neat topic. Some of you might want to look a little further into it as we move on. But what I was alluding to is that you're required at the beginning of the year with your school council and your school, all your teachers and stuff, to actually come up with a calendar of fundraising events. Because what often happens is somebody says, I want to fundraise because I want to take my kids here. And then school council wants to do several fundraisers. And the issue with that is it began to become onerous for parents, particularly in schools where fundraising is a difficulty. So out of that, just be cognizant of that and take a look at that and be sure that you're coordinating at the end of the year. It's one of those sort of beginning of the year things with school council and your staff to be sure that you've got a really good idea where you're going with your fundraising for the year.
So on that note, this is halfway through the course for everyone. So we want to just encourage you to keep going. I know it's been a lot of work, and you've been doing a great job in being accountable for that. So congratulations, and we will talk to you next week.
Okay. Wow, welcome back.
And we're back.
We had one more thought while we were out here enjoying the sunshine this lovely long weekend, and it's on our Twitter handle with Troy Maracle.
It's been really fun. We've been following the hashtag LUPQP1 and following everything that people are saying. And I've noticed other people, ourselves included, when we see other things happening from other people we follow on Twitter, we're hashtagging our group as well so that we can have that learning. We'd like to encourage you to keep that going. And as you're out or in your work, or if you're reading and come across articles or videos or anything like that that you think would be interesting, just use that hashtag LUPQP1. And that way we can still stay connected through that other form of communication. It's been lots of fun.
It has. So we like
So-
seeing you on the Twitter handle, and those of you that we've seen around the province, it's been great to get together and do a face-to-face.